So selling your idea and finding someone who gets it. Chris Cummins is the VP of Inside Sales North America for Skillsoft, based here in Fredericton. He's got close to 20 years of sales experience, both as a sales rep and a sales leader. He's been involved with 6 startup business units. He's managed direct sales, inside sales, field sales, and channel sales. Chris is sales. He's managed all facets of the sales cycle, including lead generation, hunting, and account management. He's had the opportunity to work with companies such as Equifax, HP, and Skillsoft, who are all leaders in their respective fields. Chris's different roles within sales have been as an inside sales rep, inside sales manager doing direct sales, and now his current role as VP of Sales for North America Skillsoft Corp. Over the last 5 years, Chris has worked with his team to drive growth of 25 to 30% year over year for their organization. He's also had his own sales and marketing consulting business for the last 5 years. Most recently, he's partnered with Wayne Chamberlain to create a new company called Atlantic Growth Solutions, focused on simply enabling companies to grow using a sales model. Chris has a bachelor degree in economics from St. Thomas University, and he's attended various sales and leadership training courses throughout North America. So I'm going to hand the reins over to Chris, and I guess we'll go from there. Welcome, Chris.
Great. Thank you very much for the intro. Can you hear me okay, Megan?
I can hear you just great.
Great. Perfect. Well, thanks a lot, folks, for giving me the opportunity to be here today to talk to you about something that I've lived and breathed for the last, as Megan has mentioned, for the last 20 years, and that is sales and business development. So pretty passionate about the topic, and of course get to live it and breathe it every day. So really excited to be here. Maybe get to understand a little bit more about your businesses, and take you through a few slides and some sales content, and also answer a few burning questions you might have within your own businesses with regards to sales. So I kind of wanted to start overall of talking a little bit about the landscape of selling today and some of the challenges that we're seeing as an organization at Skillsoft, and a lot of what we're seeing with some of the companies that we work with from an Atlantic Growth Solutions perspective as well. Some of the fundamentals of success from a sales perspective and business development. A little bit of an outline of what the actual sales process looks like, and I'm sure all of you have maybe seen a sales process, used a sales process, or had some sales training before, but I wanted to kind of walk through what our sales process looks like at a very high level. Understand our messaging, which is really the critical piece in any sales process, and I think a lot of what is missed with a lot of different companies is that they get a sales process but really forget to speak to the details of the messaging, which is really what differentiates you between your competition. Why salespeople fail. So I always like to talk about why people are successful, but then also on that other hand is why you see some salespeople out there and organizations out there who do fail. And then hopefully what we can leave with is a short list of 3 to 5 things and takeaways that we could potentially all get from our chat today. So what we see pretty consistent right across the board from a challenge perspective for organizations when it comes to sales. The competitive landscape is more determined than it ever has been before. No matter what business you're in, no matter what industry, no matter where you're at, the competitive landscape is pretty strong. Difficulty in scaling. So a lot of organizations might hit that first couple of sales. They might get that first $1 million, $10 million, and then from there, it's always the challenge of scaling the sales organization. Find new prospects consistently over and over again. So after you get those first couple of sales from a referral or from an existing relationship, how do you go out there and continue to scale and find new prospects? Difficulty in finding good salespeople. For those who are in organizations that you're looking for those sales professionals, that is always a challenge. I don't know where my prospects are. We hear that quite a bit from folks as far as really understanding who the profile of their best prospect is. Credibility issues for new companies or new solutions. So if you're a brand new company, you've got the extra challenge of being new out there and talking to new prospects and customers who may not know a whole lot about you. Next one is pretty near and dear to my heart, and you see this a lot, is the disconnect by what we actually see as value and what the customer actually understands as value. So a lot of times we develop a product, we have a solution, and we have a sort of preconceived notion of how we're going to fix a potential customer's problem, but really when we actually engage with customers and prospects, it's a different thing. Relationship definitely has to be there, and you hear a lot about relationship selling, and relationships are absolutely 100% important, and as important as they always have been. But what we'll see is, as we go through our slide deck here, the value's got to be there as well, and the insight has to be there as well from a client perspective. And what we are seeing is the sales cycles. It's not getting any easier for anybody out there. The sales cycles are becoming that much more complex. And here's some of the reasons that we're seeing, and what we see out there is that complexity from a sales cycle perspective is, especially since 2008, but it's just continued to get that much more complex. The purchasing cycle seems to be longer. The role of procurement seems to be that much more involved. And for every dollar amount, it used to be that potentially a department or an organization or a potential signer would have a certain level of authority. It seems now it's that much more rigorous. There's that many more people involved, and that's that much more scrutiny from procurement at every dollar level. I already mentioned this, but ROI focus, return on investment, it's that much more important for folks. Customers focus on business risks, and what will, if buying this solution or engaging in a relationship with a potential company, what is the absolute risk to me? And being able to actually get over that with your prospects and your customers. DM, for those who don't know that acronym, decision maker, and also the other challenge around the getting to the decision maker, but also what we're seeing is multiple decision makers and a consensus buying team. A lot of people involved in the decision these days for, again, not just larger dollar amounts, but for every dollar amount. And people are looking for more. They're not just looking for a vendor. They're not just looking for a order taker. They're looking for companies that can be a strategic resource and someone that can provide value and insight into even into their own business. The other challenge is there's so much more information available today. A lot of times people are engaging in sales cycles and the customer has a preconceived notion of what their needs and goals and objectives are, and potentially what the solution might be. And the expectations of your prospects of you. And that comes down to, again, being able to provide value, being able to provide insight, and being a strategic resource versus a vendor. I just want to take a real quick pause. Jenny and Megan, is everything, everybody can hear me okay? Do we have any early questions to start? I'll take that as a yes. I didn't hear you, so. The point I made earlier as far as the amount of information that is out there and available to people, what we are seeing is that more and more customers and more prospects are actually about, and basically what this slide says, about 60% complete in buying process a lot of times before they even contact you. And that is a result, the way that people are buying. It's going into their groups, their folks that they trust and connect with on a daily basis, colleagues and associations. And it's also just the amount of information that's out there. So how do we kind of combat this, and how do we make sure that we're prepared for this? It's a combination of a couple of different things. It's making sure that you're out there and engaged where people are actually looking for your information, for your solutions. And it's also getting to people before they understand they really have a need or understand that there's a solution out there that potentially could solve their pain point, goal, or objective. more and more of what we're seeing as well, and what I'm experiencing is it's kind of table stakes right across the board. And basically, what this slide is actually telling us is the sales experience and the interaction with you individually with every customer basically is about 50% of their decision. So yes, you have to have a product, you have to have great delivery, great brand, great value to price ratio, so your pricing has to be there. But what we're finding is that more and more it's that strategic resource, that interaction with that business development, business owner, salesperson that's offering them a couple of key things. Unique, valuable perspectives. They help me understand and navigate through alternatives. They help me avoid potential risks. And they educate me on the new issues and outcomes. So people are really looking for more insight, are really looking to be educated from their salesperson or their business development person about your solution, but also their industry and their business as well. So this, I think, kind of sums it up for us in a lot of kind of getting into the next phase as far as the sales cycle and messaging. But what challenge or issue can you help me solve? How do you know the challenge exists? What is the source of your information on this issue? And how or where have you solved this before, or why should I be the first? And how will you show objective measurement of success? So this is pretty interesting. This, again, sums up a lot of what we've been experiencing from a sales perspective out there. And this is actually on the back of a business card of a CIO for the state of New Jersey. So if you actually go and talk to Stephen Emanuel, if you're looking to engage in a sales conversation or potentially a relationship with him, he gives you his business card. He flips it over and will say, before you come and engage with me and sit down and have a conversation, I want to make sure that we're not wasting anybody's time, and you can at least answer those questions that I've got outlined for you. So you got to be prepared before you actually go to meet with a person like Stephen. And that is what we're seeing a lot right across the board. So the business of selling and sales and business development, some sales fundamentals to kind of start out with. Having a sales process. A lot of folks, early stage companies, mid-stage companies, even very tenured companies still sort of fly by the seat of their pants when it comes to the sales process. And the need for a sales process really works into having something that's repeatable, having something that enables your business to scale and maximize efficiencies. Be prepared, know who your customers are, where your next customer is, and that comes through investigative work, which I do have a slide of kind of outlining. Before you even engage with a customer, you really have to understand the profile of that customer. You really have to understand what goals and objectives, pain points that you could potentially solve for them. And your last customer is generally the next customer, and understanding why that customer bought from you potentially is going to help you with that next conversation to that next prospect. Knowing who you're talking to, and that really comes down to the sphere of influence. So within the organization, what we're seeing today, I've got some details on that in another slide, but some of our more complex sales cycles, you see 5 to 6 people involved in the buying decision. And you really have to understand that sphere of influence, and you really have to understand all the unique goals and objectives and pain points that each one of those individuals potentially might have. And the big one for us, and we'll spend some time really kind of getting into details of this, is knowing your messaging. So now that you have a sales process lined out, you really have to understand your customer and your prospect. It really is why you versus anyone else, you versus your competitor. Know what you can do for all people that you deal with, as I mentioned, from the sphere of influence end of things. You have to understand the pain points you solve, the goals and objectives that those people have, and what their challenges are. Being able to articulate that easy. Being able to articulate your value, your savings, your return on investment, and what the payback's going to be. And really anticipating any objections as well. We've started to use, really, from a solution sales and insight-based selling, there's a book that I'll actually show you on the last slide called The Challenger Sale. And they really talk about teach, tailor, and take control. And it is about those things, teaching your customer about your business, tailoring your solution, and then also along the sales cycle, taking control of that sales cycle along the way. incredible, prepared, and with that passion. So you do have to believe in your product, you do have to know your solutions, and every piece of passion that you have is going to come across during those conversations with your customers and prospects. Real quick overview of what we use and what we walk through and teach as a sales cycle. Pretty straightforward. Investigative research and call planning, a lot of folks would actually consider that a stage. We just consider that an activity before you engage in your sales cycle. But understanding your sphere of influence within that investigative work, who the profiles of your customers are, what the messaging is for all of those different profiles, and then also call planning. Stage one, just simply engaging with the prospect. That first time that you engage with them and having that conversation generally leads into a conversation about your value proposition, what you can do for that potential customer, and then really your goal of that first engagement is to get that next level conversation where you can get into some account profiling and identifying the opportunity. And then from there, once you actually do your account profiling, understand what their needs are, understand what their pain points, goals, and objectives are, how you can help them, the solution that you potentially could put together for them, what the ROI might be, that's when you get into your presentation and proposal. And then, of course, from there, closing and negotiations. Now, I always ask this question, what part of the sales cycle do people think is most important? And I would say, a lot of times, each one is very dependent on the other. So they're really, every step of the way is as important as the other. The engagement, number one, if you don't have your messaging down and you're not confident about your ability to engage with folks, you're never going to get through the rest of the sales cycle. But really, it's the account profiling end of things that if you've got everything else nailed, it really is about the questions that you ask, about the insight that you can give to customers and your ability to tailor a solution to them. And all of that really makes for great closing and negotiations. So if you manage your sales cycle really well up front, stage 1 to 3, the closing and negotiations hopefully becomes less of an event for you. Any questions so far, Megan or Jenny?
Yep, we have one question. So the asker is new to the industry, and he says that he's conducting a needs analysis of the market by talking to potential clients. And he's wondering how he can get the prospects to tell him their pains if he doesn't understand the challenges of the industry. How can we get them to get specific?
Yeah, I think from an industry perspective, I would do certainly start to do some research yourself, start to understand it that much more. So gathering and understanding it yourself to some extent first and primarily. Ton of information out there that's available. If there's any potential competitors out there in the space today, that's a good place to start as well. And then having a bit of a hypothesis of what those pain points, goals, and objectives are when you engage with that particular client or prospect does certainly help. So a lot of times the direct question of, hey, tell me about your goals and objectives and pain points. A customer on the very first call or conversation with you is not necessarily going to start to tell you all the pain that they have on a daily basis. So sometimes the conversation is, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about your business, some of your goals, some of your objectives? People like you in your particular industry, in your particular title, here's what they tell us are some of their goals and objectives, and I'm just wondering if you experience those same things. It's a little bit more difficult when it's absolutely brand new, but again, that investigative work, being prepared, sort of leading the conversation as well, providing a little bit of insight in the industry and your company as well, helps along the way as well. Thanks. So solution sales with insight, that's what we kind of call that sales process we just went through, what it means and what it doesn't mean. Again, you'll hear a lot of goals, pain points, objectives. If you're unable to talk about what the customer's prospect's goal, pain point, or objective is, there really isn't a sales cycle. Obviously, we're solving problems. When you get bad news, get it early. There's a lot of conversations that take place with either people that we can't help or people that really don't have the authority to buy, the budget to buy, and that comes down to the account profiling conversations that you need to be having. And sometimes we carry on a conversation with folks much too long just because of the fact that we don't want to hear a no. Your biggest asset in sales and business development is your time, and as well as your customers. So it's okay to hear no. Facilitates buying, we talked about that. People don't like to be sold, they like to buy. And you need to be mindful of the fact that you're trying to facilitate that for them. Penetration in the organization, multiple coaches, high and low, and understanding the sphere of influence in the buying team. So relying on one person in the organization takes your percentage and close rates down significantly. The more people involved, the better ability you are to actually penetrate that organization. The value, which is just a pet peeve of mine, of really understanding the payback, the ROI, the total cost of ownership for your customer, and being able to articulate that. So another point I really want to highlight is leads to your solution, not lead to your solution and not with your solution. And this is really kind of the example of really product flogging and leading the conversation with, we have this great product, here's all the features and benefits of it, here's what it looks like, here's what it sounds like, here's how we built it, here's how old it is, here's how wonderful it is, do you want to buy it? That's leading with your solution. Where you want to get to is leading to your solution, which starts with, we're ABC company, we help companies do this, here's the problems that we solve, here's the pain that we solve, here's the ROI that we deliver, and by the way, here's how we do it with the solution that we have. Management of an impeccable sales process, I mentioned this, helps facilitate an impeccable sales negotiation process. So it really is important at that account profiling stage to really be asking the questions that are going to help you build the solution, but it's also going to help you actually down the road from a closing and negotiation into things. And prospects' perception of us. We need to be, and I think through the first few slides here we've gotten this, but we really need to be a strategic resource to provide insight. And that's a strategic resource or vendor. We want to be the strategic resource, not a vendor. A vendor is very minimizes your basically ability to help that organization meet their goals and objectives. And you essentially end up being an order taker, or somebody calls you up and says, hey, I hear you have this product, can you fill out this one-pager for me and give me what your pricing is, and I'll let you know next week if we're going to buy from you, or the other 10 people we're sending the same form to. So provide insight, teach me something about my business and my industry. Real quick on this, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. You're going to have these slides to be able to review, but an example of some of the research and investigative research that you want to do before engaging with customers, understanding their industry, understanding what the size of the organization, what the financials look like, who are the people involved, what the idea of the potential business fit is. So before even calling them, having a real good understanding of them being in this particular industry, being this type of company, this size of company, here's how you believe you can actually help them. Compelling events or triggers. In all of our businesses, we're going to have those triggers that will help us identify that there is opportunity with an organization. At Skillsoft, it's as simple as a company who's expanding. Right? We see an announcement of a company who is growing their workforce by 50 or 100 or 200 people. That's potentially a great training opportunity for us because we know that they're going to be hiring new people and going to have the need for training. It's also a great starting point when you engage with the prospect and tell them that you understand that they're expanding and that potentially you might be able to help them out with that. Compelling initiatives or industry trends. Just a couple of points. From a CRM or a customer relationship management end of things, all of this gets into a system where you can house it, keep track of it, update it, keep track of all of your activity while you're engaging with your prospects. And the past sale is always kind of your next sale. I'm always baffled, and with our own salespeople, a lot of times it's, you get that real great sale while your next call should be to a very similar company of size within the same industry, because potentially they're going to have the same pain points, goals, and objectives, and you've just shown and proven that you can actually solve those potential goals and objectives, and you can have that conversation with your next prospect. real quick on the sphere of influence. Corporate Executive Board research organization out of Virginia. They wrote the Challenger book. A lot of their research is now telling us in the more complex sales cycles there's 5.4 people involved in the decision. So I guess there's 5.5 people out there that you've got to potentially rally within each one of your sales cycles. It used to be that the decision maker was the most important person. You'd get into the organization, you'd find every way, shape, or form to identify who that was, and then actually go and find that person. And then you thought you were golden because of the fact that you were dealing with the right person. And what we're finding today is you still have to sell to the decision maker, but the decision maker is saying, "Great, I'll buy this as long as these other 4.4 people in my organization also get on board with this and want to pursue it as well." So. I'm going to spend a good amount of time on messaging. So we really focus on messaging and differentiating kind of our sales process and the sales process we use with some others. And we really try to get down, and this is at company level, this is at the product level. This messaging is something you would use during your sales cycle. It's something that you'd be able to actually put up on your website and position that way as people are actually getting onto your website and checking out who you are and seeing if they want to actually engage with you. But we break it down this way. Value points, pain points, goals and objectives by the title, which you've mentioned already, the competitive differentiators, the top objections that you're going to get, and then your value proposition overall. So I'll quickly go through each one of those and give you a bit of an idea of what they look like, so that potentially one of the takeaways from today is taking this list of things and just going through your product and solution and seeing if you can actually work through that. I think we've got a question, Jenny?
Yeah. Someone was wondering if you would suggest adding a prospect on LinkedIn before calling them, even if you weren't connected through someone else.
Would I suggest adding a prospect through LinkedIn?
Yes.
And what was the last part of that, Jenny? Sorry.
Even if you're not connected through someone else, you know how it says you're connected, second connection through someone else?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you, LinkedIn is, top 3 resources for prospecting. And I think people generally have, on LinkedIn, there's some people that, you have to have their email addresses and things like that to connect with them. But I think for the most part, people do understand that there's a ton of folks out there looking to connect and potentially build business relationships. So absolutely. And LinkedIn is just a fantastic place for prospecting, period. The search functionality in LinkedIn is great. So you can go in by title, you can go in by any description that a person has in their profile, geographic region, industry, and things like that. So yeah, absolutely. I guess yes on the question. Then just to note that LinkedIn's fantastic from a prospecting end of things.
Thanks.
No problem. So breaking the messaging down, we usually like to start with value points, right? And get companies to kind of start listing out just taking your solution or your company and breaking out all those tangible benefits or features that you have within your solution, within your company, listing all of them out in point form. Focus in on the top 10 because I would just list them all out, and especially as a team, if you just sat down with your company, 2 or 3 individuals, and just said, all right, what are all of the things that we can talk about? 24/7 support. We've got auto registration on our site. We have what are all of those things are, right? That just kind of gets your head around what are all those value points. Where that leads to is in the next couple of slides, really being able to kind of understand what your value proposition is, as those value points are going to work right into those. Pain points, goals, and objectives by the title. You want to be doing this because everybody in the organization potentially has a different goal and objective, or a different challenge, or a different pain point. Now, CEO, generally they're kind of concerned about everything right across the board. COO, it's slightly different. That VP, or whatever department it might be different. A manager might have some different goals and objectives. End users, evaluators, that whole sphere of influence. So what we get people to do is really kind of list out all of the titles that you engage with within the organizations that you're calling, So do you call in at manager level? Do you usually go VP? Do you actually call in at the CEO or COO level? And just list out what their pain points are, their goals and objectives by title. And then also, with those goals and objectives and those pain points, how can you help them, and how does your solution actually help solve those pain points, goals, and objectives? Then your competitive differentiators. So something you do that no one else does, something others do but you do differently or more efficiently. So we get this a lot when people are giving their value propositions. They're throwing out nice, well-crafted terms and phrases and things like that. But what I always think about is, why do I really care, right? And then also, if somebody does put something out there that says, hey, we've got the best, world-class service globally, right? Well, is that really true, or is that something that every salesperson or business development person is going to be saying, right? So you really got to think about it. Is it uniquely different? Do I do something that nobody else does? Or do I do something that, yeah, sure, my competitor does, but it is uniquely different in some way? And also be able to defend it. Top objections. So some folks are a little bit bewildered by this, why we'd outline top objections, but we could talk quite a bit or do a full session on just how to handle objections. But the first point and the first thing that you need to be doing is making sure you anticipate what those objections are, right? People are going to always say you're too expensive. So that's number one, generally on the list of top objections. If you're a new startup or a new company, if people aren't asking you this, potentially they're thinking it, is, geez, I don't know you, how long have you been around, how many employees do you have? It could be a service issue, it could be whatever it might be. So first step is anticipating them. And all you do is kind of list all those objections out and then say, well, geez, if I get this objection, how do I combat that objection, right? Maybe it's a lot of times a misconception from a prospect's end of things, right? We have a lot of people from the Skillsoft perspective say, oh, well, I used e-learning, and we weren't happy with it, right? That's one of the objections. We used to use e-learning, and it wasn't very good. And we turn that around to actually start having a conversation. We know it's going to come up, and we know kind of the conversation we're going to start with it, which is, how long ago did you use e-learning? Who was it with? What content did you use? What platform did you use? So again, we could spend probably about 2 hours on how to deal with objections. But again, anticipating them initially, asking a few questions to understand them that much better, and then coming in and combating that objection. Also is a great exercise because there could be some fundamental things with your business, with your solution that, collecting all of those objections from a business development and a sales perspective that help you kind of tailor your solution to make it better. It's not just about dealing with the objection and overcoming it on that phone call or in that engagement. It is about, okay, I'm getting this objection every second time that I talk to somebody. Maybe I need to go back and change my offering in some way, shape, or form. So all this leads us to a value proposition. And some folks would, talk about this as their elevator pitch, and I would say it's similar to that. I think what your value proposition absolutely needs to do, though, is leave that person kind of understanding, or that person asking you the question of, tell me more, right? And also with that proposition, having some pretty, within 45 seconds being able to say who you are, what you do, and what you can do for them, essentially. So pretty clear statement of tangible results, and the more specific, the better, right? Some of the weak ones that you see are very generic. The most technologically advanced and robust system on the market. I don't even know exactly what that means. We improve communication and morale. We offer training classes in a wide variety of areas. My product was rated the best in class by the leading authorities. Very, very weak. Where you want to get to is, my value proposition is immediately going to tell you how I can help you increase revenues. I'm going to get you to market quicker. I'm going to help you decrease some costs, improve some operational efficiency, increase market share, decrease employee turnover, improve retention levels, and how it differentiates. And again, the more specific that you can get, the better. So at the end of your value proposition, if you can get to, we help companies improve their bottom line by X percentage. We've seen a 5-to-1 ROI when our solution is implemented. The more specific, the better. So again, your value proposition is we have a tool, solution, product that buyers, trainers, and CEOs use because they deliver in a convenience and quality buy, and our products are world-class and unique and different because. And it's pretty interesting when you actually start this process of putting down your value proposition, how you're going to want to tweak it. So again, a great exercise is once you go through your messaging is sit down with a team or a few folks, get your value proposition together, and actually scrutinize it, right? Because it's going to be the first thing that you want to deliver to that prospect or that customer that you're selling into a different department. And you generally have about 45 seconds to catch their attention. So just a real quick, I did this up real quickly today from an Atlantic Growth Solutions end of things. Atlantic Growth Solutions provides lead generation services to organizations by generating qualified leads. We're the only company focused on Atlantic Canada and guarantee our values in a pay-for-performance model. We can provide your team 10 to 20 qualified leads per month, in turn delivering 20% increase in funnel value with a typical 5-to-1 ROI. Now that, even for me, is a little bit longer than I would like it. And of course, once you get that value proposition, it has to be a conversation, not necessarily a script either. But generally, your value prop is when you engage that prospect for the first time. That's what you lead with, right? And then what they're going to ask you is, well, tell me a little bit more about that. And then what you're going to be able to say is, well, Miss CEO, we work with companies just like yourself in a number of different industries. Specifically, what we help companies do to solve these pain points, goals, and objectives by putting these particular solutions in place. Then they're going to say, well, great, but I know of 3 other companies just like you, and how are you different? In comes your competitive differentiators, right? And then it's going to be, well, that's all well and good, but you know what? I don't have really budget for this at this point in time. And then comes your objections. So that's kind of how all that messaging exercise helps you on that kind of that front-end conversation. And, it's not as easy as that, and it's not as scripted as that, and it's not as linear as that either. Generally, the conversation, as you folks probably know, is pretty much all over the place, but all of those pieces are there. I'm not going to spend too much time on objection handling, but I wanted to leave this actually in the slide deck, as there is a good method to, and a conscious effort, just like your messaging exercise, your sales process for dealing with objections. A lot of people like to just basically keep the prospect calling, maybe use a little bit of smoke and mirrors, and if I just keep talking, I'm just going to be able to continue on the sales cycle. We don't generally sign up for that. As we've mentioned, we anticipate the objections. We anticipate the objections that are coming at us. Ask some questions. Well, who did you used to use? Why did you use them? How long ago? Tell me a little bit more about that. Make sure you understand their objection. Provide that counter. Again, hey, I understand why you would have an issue with e-learning, because 10 years ago it was still in its infancy from a technology perspective. Here's some of the changes and improvements that have been made over the last 10 years. We've actually got 6,000 clients using us today, 19 million users. So I think what you'd find today is a little bit different than what you experienced 10 years ago. And then move forward from there and make sure that you have that confirmation from your customer and prospect. So just to review that again, it starts with your value points, getting into your pain points, goals, and objectives by title, your competitive differentiators, top objections, and then that sews in your value proposition. Any questions out there?
I'm wondering if there is there a set of personality traits that you find are characteristic with someone who's suited to sales or not?
Yeah, I mean, I get that question a lot of, is a salesperson sort of born, or or can sales be trained? And I absolutely 100% believe sales can be trained. It is about getting a process, understanding your messaging, and along with that comes the confidence to do that. So absolutely, I think there's some personalities that certainly, if you don't like talking to people and engaging with people or are passionate about your solution or your product, you probably shouldn't sign up for a sales job. But it absolutely is something that can be trained. It's not a mysterious formula out there. There is absolutely a process that you can follow, again, to kind of nail your messaging, nail your process, and then be comfortable with your solution, your product. And again, you just got to be comfortable and passionate about talking and helping people.
Perfect, thanks.
So I thought I'd put this in here too, and again, spark some conversation, and folks chime in with any of your questions. Don't be shy. Why salespeople fail, and I always kind of cover this off. This was from part of an article that I had read, and then I kind of added to it, and it was about why high-tech salespeople fail, but it was something that I looked at pretty consistent right across the board, no matter what industry or what you're selling. But buyers have a system, and salespeople usually don't. So there are procurement and legal departments that go out to training every quarter, every year that learn how to deal with salespeople, right? How to manage the process, how to squeeze as much margin out of you as they possibly can, and a lot of times the salesperson isn't equipped with a similar process on their end to make sure that they're getting through that process as best they can for their organization. I mentioned this already, spending too much time with a prospect who will never buy, and it's not about being callous and not building relationships or planting the seed for future, or building something that might happen in a year's time. But there are people in those instances tend to talk to prospects who are never going to buy, and you just can't help. We don't know enough about our customers on all aspects, front end of the sales cycle, to help us build the solution, to help us build ROI, to help us actually close and negotiate the sale. We're not talking to the right people. It's always one of the things that I ask: who are we speaking to? What's their authority level? Who else is involved? But generally, we don't know enough. We're not talking to the right people. Salespeople talk too much. So, I'm sure everybody's had the experience of potentially when they were buying something themselves that you couldn't get a word in edgewise because the person was product flogging, not asking enough questions, and just really thinking that if I'm passionate and excited about my product and I talk enough, you're just going to buy. Salespeople focus on price and want discounts for every deal. Another pet peeve of mine. And this is basically because a lot of times we don't do the work in the front end of the sales cycle, understanding what the goals and objectives are, understanding how we're helping customers, understanding what the ROI is. So when the customer comes back and asks for a discount, instead of saying, sure, I'll go ask my manager, my CEO, my boss, being able to feel confident about the conversation of defending their value. Product training is overemphasized. I've mentioned this a couple of different times. Product knowledge is misused, therefore selling percents is presenting. So people lead with the solution versus they don't lead to their solution. So we're not talking about goals and objectives and challenges we've helped solve and ROI that we've delivered and things like that. We're talking about the text and specs of the product, which folks are just not going to be as engaged with you. We had no value to the process, so we're a vendor, order taker, not providing insight, not educating our customers. We're not a strategic resource. Can't articulate the value, the competitive differentiators, or why for the customer. So again, going back to all your messaging, you can tell them everything about your product, all the text and specs and all the benefits, but in the end I can't necessarily tell you what the value is for you. I can't tell you why we do it better than anybody else. I can't tell you how much money you're going to save or how much money you're going to drive. Budgets, and this is one that early on in the sales cycle you have to be understanding where you're at. But a lot of times we're dealing with companies or prospects that don't have the budget to buy, or we're not working with them close enough to build the business case, the business fit, to be able for them to find a budget or develop a budget. Firm commitments from buyers, and this is on a small scale as well. Get into the sales cycle. Sometimes we can't even get a prospect to commit to a next meeting. They'll say that they do want to talk to you. Call me back in 3 or 4 weeks. I'll reach out to you. But it's as little as making sure that we're getting commitments on next steps, understanding what the value is, making sure that it's not just us expecting, but making sure that the prospects come along with us. Allowing people to buy versus being sold, poor follow-up. You'd be amazed at how many salespeople just after a meeting, we talk about champ letters and echo letters. Basically, every conversation you have with a customer, you should be summarizing what that conversation that took place. Great to have a conversation today. Here's what I understood, what your goals and objectives and pain points were. Here's how I think we can help you. Here's when our next meeting is. I'll send out an invite for next Thursday at 2 o'clock, and we'll have continue to have a great conversation on the topic. We just don't prospect enough. You know, I don't think any salesperson would raise their hand and say, I love cold calling, I love prospecting. They don't, generally. And prospecting and cold calling is one of the lowest percentage close ratios out there compared to being able to develop a funnel and being able to get hand raisers and semi-qualified leads. But a lot of times, and most companies just don't have enough to drive their top-line revenue growth, so you got to do prospecting. Lack of planning. A lot of salespeople just not really good at sales planning. Lack of practice. So that messaging exercise that we kind of went through and outlined, it's a really great opportunity if you're going to do that with your team or 2 or 3 folks within your organization to be able to sit down, put all that together, and then actually practice it. Right? We actually, some of the classes that we do in our training here at Skillsoft, we'll actually do role play right from the beginning of the call right to the close. We'll get people to practice their account profiling meeting. We get them to get up and actually do a business fit presentation as well. People came into the wrong idea of the profession, what it actually takes to be successful, and they don't invest in their own development. So just like any other profession out there, to be successful in sales and to be a professional salesperson, you always have to figure out how you're going to get better and ways to be able to do that. Any other questions, Jenny?
Yep, we have a question from Chris. He says, if larger conferences are your major sales events, what can you do to prepare for this?
So that's a great question. There's a lot of companies out there that depending on the number of sales and who they have out there, their trade shows and conferences are one of the best opportunities for them. So it used to be a lot of times, folks would go to a conference, they just kind of show up, look who was actually attending, go meet with a couple of people potentially. We always suggest, as soon as you can, get a list of the attendees, start profiling those attendees, and 2 to 3 weeks before the event actually happens, start to engage with those folks, right? And it's a really good purpose of call when we talk about investigative research and call planning. It's a really good reason to pick up the phone and call someone. We're heading to this trade show in the next 3 weeks. I know that you're going to be there as well. I've been really wanting to chat with you. It'd be great if we met, Tuesday at 2 o'clock at this booth number so we can have a conversation, right? So I think it's a great opportunity. All of those potential prospects or customers are going to be at that conference, but you really got to work it before you actually get there. Does that answer that question?
Yep.
So some of the things that from today, I just kind of wanted to before we get into any other questions, was I think if I could give any kind of guidance from the sales perspective and some of the things that you might want to take away from today or be thinking about is get a process if you don't have one today. Don't make it too complex to start, but make sure you kind of understand that there's stages to the sales process. Start working and maneuvering through those. Really nail your messaging. So even if you're not great at your sales process, really get your messaging down, because that's gonna help you even when you don't do that great of a job of maneuvering through that process. Understand who you're selling to, what drives them, and why they would buy, not why you think they would buy. Focus on the problems you solve, the value you bring, the ROI you deliver, not your product tech and specs, and leading, again, not leading with, but leading to. Answer the question, the why you question, and why you versus anybody else that's sort of redundant with your messaging. Calibrate that messaging regularly. Every time you have a new product that launches, sit down and think about that messaging, go through that exercise. Be very aware of the sphere of influence and who you're selling to, right? So who are the decision makers in the organizations? What titles do I engage with? And then again, what are all those things that are important to those folks? So we could spend probably a couple hours just talking about the tools that are out there for sales, but there's a ton of tools out there available to you. We talked about LinkedIn. There's obviously your straight up CRM tool. There's different list acquisition companies out there, different investigative tools, different lead generation companies out there that could potentially help you out. And early on, halfway through, longer stage company, engage with your prospects and customers, right? So again, back up to understanding your value, not from your perspective, but by your prospects and customers' perspective. No better way to understand and to figure out what value you potentially have than engaging with prospects and customers and having lots of conversations with them. I just wanted to mention one last thing, the Challenger sale. So if you get a chance to read a sales book in the next couple of months, I'd highly suggest the Challenger sale. Fantastic book and one of the best ones I've read in probably 10 to 15 years. So that was all I had, Jenny. I'd love to hear from folks if they had any more questions that they wanted to ask.
I actually have a question. For small businesses that don't necessarily have a big marketing or sales budget, is there any pieces of software or technology that you could suggest for managing prospects?
Yeah, it's amazing that CRM tools, even for the smaller companies, are pretty reasonable. So, for instance, I always just tell people to buy Salesforce. I think for even a small business, it's about $65 a month. There are some free options out there, and I think you can pretty easily just get into Google and search by, free CRM tools. So yeah, there's a number of different ones out there. Salesforce is actually pretty reasonable, even if you're just buying one seat.
Perfect, thanks.
Is that it? Has anyone got any other questions? If not, I think we are good to go. I'll just remind everyone that this was a recorded session. We will post a link on our website, and then we will post it to a YouTube channel, which we are currently building, and you can access it again from there. So thanks so much, Chris, for doing this for us. For those of you who sent along some questions, we are going to do a draw tomorrow. Jenny will send out a note to everyone to let them know who the winner of that draw is, and you'll get a gift card sent to you in the mail, unless you happen to be somewhere in the region, and then I'll probably hand it off personally. All right. So we're about to sign off. Chris, did you have anything else you wanted to plug?
No, that's great. I mean, from a sales and business development end of things, from an Atlantic Growth Solutions, we just happen to solve a whole bunch of pain points, goals, and objectives from a sales perspective. So if you're looking to have even just a conversation in any area in sales and business development, look me up on LinkedIn and love to have a conversation. And whether our company Atlantic Growth Solutions could help you out or not, it'd be great just to have a conversation with you as well. So that's about it. And thanks so much for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure.
Great. Thanks so much, Chris. We're going to sign off now. So hope everyone has a great day, and hopefully we have no more snow apocalypse hitting us here in Atlantic Canada. All right. Thanks again, and cheers for now.